BNP Paribas. Hans-Guenter, good to see you. Is that the case?
Well, we are seeing a lot of measures pointing into the right direction. Now you see as well that locally there are guarantees provided. We had been actually quite critical concerning this national approach which had been introduced a couple of weeks ago, where each country was going on its own, in particular in Europe, and it would have been much better if it would have sought supranational solutions. For example, if you see what happened in the Hungarian money market on Wednesday, that is a result because Europe was seeking this national ways, because there had been central banks from Central Europe which were as well requiring dollar and especially euro liquidity. They were discriminated by those national measures. So we need to widen the umbrella. That is very important. Now you see that in Australia and Asia there are guarantees provided. We hear that the IMF is ready to step into Ukraine and into Hungary if required. All that are good steps into the right direction, is going to calm down investors' fear. And I guess that today is actually going to be a quite good day for risk takers. We hear a lot of positive news overnight, reaching from commodity prices being slightly up, LIBOR spreads declining, the US equity market in its futures continuing to rise, bond insurers in talk with the US government to bail out or to adjust their balance sheets. All that is positive news, and that actually will have currency implications.
We'll come to those in a minute, Hans-Guenter, but I want to get your view as to how, we see these spreads, LIBOR spreads, actually start to narrow. How long is it going to take to get back to normal levels?
Yeah, first of all, it was very clear that it would start very slowly, simply because when you have lending restrictions within banks, then it takes some time to soften up those lending restrictions. There are a lot of decisions to be made within these institutions. If they wanted to lend from A to B, then obviously you need to have a credit proposal being put into place, and that does take time. But now we are getting into that situation where things are going to speed up, and the LIBOR spread in the coming week is very likely to come off quite significantly.
Your view, your house has, is that $1.4 trillion at the moment in capital injections is enough to deal with the past, but not enough to cope with future situations. Discuss.
Well, what we see is that it is the velocity in the money market which is really the concern. So it is not the level of liquidity. We have a lot of liquidity around, but actually it is in liquidity. It is not going to work, and therefore we have to make sure that the velocity in the money market is getting back on track. And for that, you need to get the credit risk readjusted. And that is what we have to focus on. That is what governments have to look at. That is what central banks have to look at. We have to make sure that the credit risk is going to be lowered, and then the money market is going to look better.
So from what you're saying there, I'd immediately take the view that your belief is there are going to be more corporate defaults, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, if you look at the financial sector, then in the financial sector, especially in the United States, I'm quite convinced that we are not going to see in the financial sector another big default. Of course, the one or other small saving account or bank might still go bust, but on the financial side, I'm now convinced that we have seen most of it. You might ask why? Simply because it is not affordable to have another default. If you just look at the CDS spread, what happened in the case of Lehman's, we have outstanding bonds of 150, and you have CDS of around 450 against that. So the Lehman bankruptcy put a substantial stress into the marketplace. Into retro perspective, it was a big mistake to let Lehman go, and therefore US authorities might have learned out of that.
Let's move to the implications now as far as the foreign exchanges go. Does the dollar continue to strengthen? We've seen continued strengthening. We seem to have just at the moment created a floor. Where do we go from here?
Well, I was saying that today is going to be a day for a risk taker. So that means that you will have the yen crosses and so forth having a good lift, and that is going to lead to a higher euro dollar. Also, everything is going to be fairly limited. But the next few days, certainly a lift on that side. Dollar yen should do better. We could see Australian dollars trading back up to 72, 73, and that as well in an environment of declining volatility. Now, we have to talk about the long-term prospect, and there we have recently changed our view. We had so far suggested that sterling should be the weakest currency in town, and we were pretty much correct in that. Remember, in July at this program I was predicting 165 in cable, and that was highly disputed. But now the euro is going to be the weakest currency.
Hans-Guenter, that's a big call there. You did make the one about sterling. Thanks for joining us. Hans-Guenter Redeker there from BNP Paribas. Coming up, US elections in the frame, and the two presidential candidates are back on the campaign trail. We're with them and looking at what they've been saying. Details coming up.
Because of fire and the perfect temperature for medium rare. Because of yeast